Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for being here today. My name is Romulicious, and I have the honor of representing the defendant, Star Wars Outlaws. Now, I understand the spotty track record my defendant and its developer bears, but I believe this is a prime example of when the verdict of this court case was decided before the trial started. At the end of this trial, when you've heard all the testimonies and seen all the facts, I am confident you will come to the only conclusion the law demands: that Star Wars Outlaws is not a bad Star Wars game. Star Wars Outlaws was promised to be the first open-world Star Wars game. You see, every Star Wars game that's come out so far has always had linear levels to complement its gameplay and story. That is, if we ignore the few games that do have open-world features. Ubisoft seems to be forgetting about a game that came out just 2 years earlier. Outlaws has 4 planets you can free roam in, a measly number compared to the whopping 24 planets in LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. However, that didn't stop me, a giant Star Wars nerd, from getting the game and trying it for myself. And by trying it, I mean paying to be an early access beta tester. But honestly, I had a blast playing Outlaws. Sure, it wasn't like Red Dead Redemption as promised, but it offered a fun and somewhat unique playing experience. I can tell this game was made with so much love for the franchise, and for the first time since The Mandalorian Season 2, we're not getting nostalgia shoved into our faces. Instead, any cameos and references made to the greater Star Wars universe make sense to the story and the characters involved. In defense of Star Wars Outlaws, I want to break down why the game has quite a bit to offer with its gameplay, open world, and story. Keep in mind, I recognize there is still plenty of room for refinement and improvement, but let's first talk about the gameplay. The gameplay that the developers conceptualized is really cool, keyword being conceptualized, however. Everyone thought playing in the Star Wars universe without a lightsaber or the Force would be boring. Even I thought so too before playing the game. A single-player shooter has been done many times before, especially in an open-world setting, but Outlaws offers just a bit more to its experience to make it somewhat unique and interesting. My favorite example of this is the fast talk mechanic. Whenever Kay gets noticed by an enemy during a stealth section, we have a brief moment to press R3 in order to fast talk, which is just momentarily delaying the enemy from making any quick moves. It would be cool if there was a way for Kay to talk her way out of every situation, but that kind of gameplay doesn't really fit here. Instead, it just gives you a split-second advantage at shooting first, which is actually pretty accurate for a scoundrel in the Star Wars universe.
Yes, I bet you have.
It also pairs well with the Adrenaline Rush ability, which is essentially Red Dead Redemption 2's Dead Eye ability. It can make for some pretty cinematic scenes that occur after being discovered in stealth sections. Speaking of stealth, let's talk about that. Stealth is a big part of this game, which feels refreshing, especially since stealth isn't even an option in the Jedi series. Now, is the stealth done well? It's debatable. There are times when I felt the stealth was actually pretty challenging, but once I learned to abuse Nix with distracting the guards or attacking them, it became a lot easier. But I think how the game makes stealth interesting is in how it presents opportunities. There were a few times I was contracted to slice a terminal in an Imperial base, so I'd sneak in, knock out a few stormtroopers, and get the job done. Simple and honestly embarrassingly easy. Oh, but wait! There's a chest in the area, and it would be really convenient if I got it now instead of having to do all the work to come back and break in later. So now I have to stealth my way across the entire base, scouring for this one chest, ultimately raising my chances of getting caught or killed just because I'm getting a little greedy. And hey, maybe I'm coping, but I think that's what made it interesting to me. Anytime I did struggle with stealth were times when I became the greedy scoundrel that the game wants me to be. There might be extra credits or valuables here is exactly what a scoundrel would say, and in that way, the game felt it was sticking true to its name. Another fun aspect to the game was its reputation system. I thought it was a brilliant idea upon introduction. Crime syndicates play a large part in Outlaws, both in its story and its open world. You can find territories of theirs on various planets, and Kay's access or restriction to these areas are all dependent on her reputation with them. As Kay starts to make a name for herself, the syndicates will start contracting her for jobs and asking her to complete quests. However, these syndicates are often fighting against each other, so contracts might look like smuggle pike goods or retrieve lost hut cargo, which usually means that bettering your reputation with one syndicate worsens your reputation with another. That's actually a pretty cool concept, especially for someone like me who wants to be on the best reputation with all these syndicates. I only wish the consequences of reputation choices were a lot more severe. I somehow managed to keep a good to excellent status with most of the syndicates for most of the game. I did this by just abusing contracts that were like, raid some pirates or get Imperial data. I would love it if the mechanic was a lot more volatile as the beginning of the game promised me. And that would be especially cool because sometimes you may come across dilemmas when completing contracts. For example, when you'd complete a hut contract, ND5 would interrupt to say there's another offer on the table.
Hey, you've got another offer.
So instead of fulfilling the original intended contract, I could betray them and help out another syndicate for double the credits. This would make for a very fascinating gameplay mechanic, having to balance my reputation with the syndicates against my greed for credits. However, there's just one problem. I have so many credits. Fulfilling my contract as intended does not harm my reputation at all, and I really don't need the credits, so this decision is really easy. I often just fulfill the contracts as intended, especially when an independent buyer would make an offer, because again, why would I harm my reputation for credits I don't really need? This lends itself to the biggest issue I have with this game, its economy.
Thanks for the credits.
There's a lot to do with credits in this game. Buying materials or outfits from various vendors, betting money in Sabak, betting it in Fathier races, buying intel or a fake VIP card. There's so much you can do with the currency. Except the amount I can bet in Sabak and Fathier races are fixed to astonishingly low amounts. The amount to buy intel or give to a random homeless person is also fixed really low. Finding credits is so easy that I never once felt I didn't have enough of it, even early on in the game. So I had no issue just randomly spending credits around because I was rich. The economy in this game suffers from an inflation issue. This is my biggest gripe with Star Wars Outlaws. An outlaw or scoundrel like Kay shouldn't be swimming in money. Consider a version instead where I was consistently dirt poor, where the game very sparingly offers me credits, where I had to fulfill syndicate contracts to earn some extra cash and buy that upgrade I want for my ship. Where when an opposing syndicate puts down an offer mid-contract, I actually take a second to consider my options. Is it worth receiving double the credits if my reputation takes double the hit? This kind of moral dilemma is exactly what I wanted from this game, asking me if I favor wealth or loyalty. Continuing down this thought experiment, imagine how fun betting and gambling would be in a world where my dollar actually meant something. What if playing a few hands of Sabak meant I could make a hefty return on my wealth? It would encourage me to play the game more, cheat more, actually engage with this recurring minigame that you find all over every planet. And you know what? I actually enjoyed playing Sabak too. It was actually very fun to learn the rules of the game, try to use cheats, and earn a reputation as a Sabak legend. I just wanted to choose how much I could bet. Going all in on a hand with Lando would be amazing. Instead, I'm stuck with 50 credits. So the economy in this game kinda sucks. It honestly didn't ruin my experience, but now all I think about is this other hypothetical version of the game I've been dreaming up. Another hypothetical version of the game is the one where Ubisoft promised us a full-scale open world. Am I reaching with that statement to transition us into the next section of the video? Yes and no. The open world excels in setting the atmosphere. You can walk into various buildings to gamble, play sabacc, eat some food with Nyx, even eavesdrop on some strangers' conversations. You can actually speak to quite a few strangers on the streets of the planet. Some will be asking you for change, or asking for your help with a task, or asking you to even join the Empire.
With the Empire, you'll have the chance to make a real difference. Make your mark on the galaxy.
Like standing in the middle of a cantina getting ignored by everyone? Huh.
The game has so many errands that it sometimes felt overwhelming, but it also made the world feel a bit real. There are a million things to do and NPCs to interact with. The only thing I felt the world was really missing was slightly more life. You could be zooming around on your speeder and running into pirates on their speeders, but you'll never see a ship come out of hyperspace in the sky. You could be alerted to a pirate raid occurring nearby, but pickpocketing strangers with Nyx doesn't get you blasted. The promise of an Imperial Wanted level like in GTA is actually really exciting, but it falls a bit flat when the only way to get the Empire on your tail is to piss them off in particular. It's not like they'll come after you for robbing anyone or killing people. The Empire's Wanted level is purely based on retribution. The one thing cool about the Wanted level is that if you max it out, the Empire will send a Death Trooper squad after you, and the only way to clear your Wanted level is to defeat them. While the actual breathing vitality of the worlds can be hit or miss, I was quite impressed with the worlds themselves. Toshara, Akiva, and Tatooine all have pretty large maps. Kijimi is a bit small and cramped, but that's okay given the massive playground that's available on the other maps. The speeder bike makes traversing the land quite fun, from the wind tunnels on Toshara to the sweeping dunes on Tatooine to the choppy waters of Akiva. These worlds were literally designed with the speeder in mind, which is just utmost props to the developers. I often didn't care much about fast travel when the speeder bike was decently fast, and I enjoyed exploring the planets as I drove across their lands, even if they are a little bit empty. Beyond that, I found space traversal also pretty fun. Controlling your starship feels surprisingly right and intuitive. It can be a bit tiring to have to run through that cutscene to get into space, but once I'm there, I'm having a pretty good time. The various orbits you can explore surrounding the planets are also just as varied and interesting as the planets themselves. Kijimi's orbit consists of an all-encompassing nebula cloud, which can be quite scary to fly through. Toshara and Akiva's orbits have Imperial territories that you shouldn't enter and random shipwrecks that float in their space. But one of my favorite parts of the game is my first time entering Tatooine's orbit, where the Hutts maintain the front line. There's nothing else in Tatooine's orbit, it's simply Hutt territory. So if you don't have a good relationship with the Hutt Syndicate, they're not going to let you fly through without a bit of confrontation. Speaking of territories, Kay's access to Syndicate areas, which as I mentioned before, is based purely off of her reputation status with said Syndicate. Given that I had a good to excellent reputation with the Syndicates, I never really struggled with access to areas, but within most Syndicate territories lies a restricted area, regardless of reputation. Given the greedy little scoundrel I was, I often tried to enter these restricted areas and steal everything I could. I mean, that one chest is just begging to be found.
Don't matter to me, I'm greedy.
But again, stealth was relatively easy because Nyx did all the heavy lifting and the gameplay itself isn't super challenging. Which concludes my thoughts on the gameplay and the open world in Star Wars Outlaws. There is much left to be desired, like challenging stealth sections, a more punishing economy, and a bit more fluff with the open world, but overall, I didn't have many complaints as I played through the story. Oh yes, the story! The narrative that drives Star Wars Outlaws is unfortunately nothing short of ordinary. A scoundrel, after crossing the Zarek Besh Syndicate, assembles a team of other outlaws to attempt a heist against the crime syndicate. There is nothing truly surprising or unique about this plot, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad Star Wars story, which is sadly actually rare these days. The writing is solid and the characters are quite lovable, if I say so myself. Kay is a good protagonist, but maybe a bit too naive for someone who's meant to be like Han Solo. I don't know if it's the writing or the voice actress, but she often sounded unsure about herself at any given moment.
What are you? One of Thornton's guys?
Whoa. Yes?
A true scoundrel would believe the lie they're spewing, but in this case, Kay seemed nervous way too often. Maybe there's an argument that Kay is new to this life, but I don't feel like I saw great development in her assuredness throughout the story. But beyond that, there are more than a few moments within the story itself that honestly floored me. One of the sections of the game that pulled me in completely was when Nyx is stolen and taken away to be part of Jabba's menagerie of creatures. The only way for Kay to get Nyx back is to plot a heist into Jabba's palace.
Where is he?
All this over that stupid little pet. All right.
I don't know why, but I really didn't expect Jabba's palace to be in the game, nonetheless heistable. There's something about it that felt like prime Star Wars. The various cameos and references we got inside were also very appealing and not so in your face, which I enjoyed. And as well, because I didn't have Nyx during this stealth section, it felt truly challenging. And while that section of the game was really fun, the number one reason I kept coming back to play this game, it wasn't eating various planetary cuisines with Nyx, though that was pretty cool. It wasn't exploring the insides of a dead Sarlacc pit, though that was also pretty cool. It was ND5. I had my eyes on ND5 since before the game came out because Commando Droids alone had the most aura in the Clone Wars, but this was a Commando Droid with a trench coat.
Imagine what we could do if there were more droids like us. We would rule this entire planet. Precisely.
ND5 also acts as the heart of the game, surprisingly. Despite Kay having a complicated backstory with her mom and her mom being a key character in the third act, Kay's relationship with ND5 is far more interesting on every level. To get this sassy, cold, and calculating robot to slowly love and open up to you was worth every mission. It's their whole dynamic that really thrusts the story into a level that feels emotionally rewarding. I don't care much about Kay's troubled childhood or her desperation to remove her death mark. Just give me more ND5! Otherwise, like I said, the story isn't that much to write home about. There are some shining moments and characters, but I don't think it lives up to the writing of the Jedi games. Still, I was pleasantly surprised at the level of care Ubisoft put into this story. And not just that, but the whole game itself too. It feels like true Star Wars fans made this game. From its gameplay to its open world to its story, Star Wars Outlaws is layered with details and love for the franchise. Sure, there's Easter eggs, some cameos, but nothing comes out of nowhere for the sake of nostalgia or fan service. It's all relevant to this story and these characters. Everything just makes sense, making this game a nice puzzle piece to fit into the greater Star Wars jigsaw lore. Does the game hold up to what Ubisoft promised? A fully realized breathing open world with no bugs? Yeah, probably not, but it's also a good game besides that. I think if you're a fan of Star Wars, the original trilogy in particular, and you can get past the clunky controls, this will be a rewarding gameplay experience for you. It's by no means anything amazing, but sadly, compared to all the slop Lucasfilm has fed us recently, this one is delectable. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we've walked through every piece of evidence, every testimony, and every accusation. And time and again, the facts have led us to one undeniable truth. My client, Star Wars Outlaws, is a good Star Wars game. Everything you've heard about the game besides this video is all hearsay and assumptions made by shadows. So I ask you now, not as jurors, but as Star Wars gaming fans, look past the noise and look at the truth and return the only verdict that honors it. Star Wars Outlaws exceeded expectations. By a little bit. Thank you so much for watching. If you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments, but please bring proof. A subscribe would always be appreciated, but on your own time, it's no pressure. Thanks.